Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the very first episode of Oxnard Live with Dan Chavez Jr. I'm Dan Chavez Jr. Today, we got a very special guest. We have Michelle Ascencion, who is the current Oxnard City Clerk. Just a little bit of background about Michelle. She has lived in the city of Oxnard since the age of 6, attended schools in the Oxnard Elementary School District in elementary and middle school, and graduated from Santa Clara High School. So she is a saint, as well as received a bachelor's in journalism from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. Ms. Ascencion started her career in local government back in 2006 with the city of Poronimi being named the city clerk. She served in that position for a total of 8 years and then moved on to becoming the clerk of the board for the Ventura Regional Sanitation District for 1 year, and then landing in the city of Oxnard, her hometown, as the city clerk. She lives with her husband, David, who is a native Oxnard resident, and they have 4 children together. So please join me in welcoming Michelle Ascencion, Oxnard City Clerk. Michelle.
Hi,
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm great. I don't know how you did all of that in your career with 4 kids. That's pretty amazing. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
So thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
Thanks for having me. This is exciting. I'm your first guest.
I know, right? This is exciting for me. I'm a little nervous. I would admit that, but it's exciting. So we'll have fun with it.
Yeah.
So I want to get into Oxnard's election system because it's a little bit different. Now, what is the difference now compared to when you ran back in 2016?
Right. So you're right. There's definitely going to be some stark contrast between 2016 when I ran for election and this year's 2020. Well, I mean, just about everything about this year is different, right? It's really just an anomaly. But election-wise, this is only the second time that the city council members are being elected by district. That happened in early 2018 when the city went through the districting process. This will also be the first time that the mayor is elected to a 4-year term. And you'll recall that Measure B that was adopted overwhelmingly by the voters in the March primary, that was one of the changes that it made to our election system. Previously, the mayor had been elected in every election cycle, every even year in November. So we do still have several at-large seats, the mayor, the city clerk, and the treasurer. But the city council is different in that only particular geographical areas of the city are going to be electing a city council member this year. So you'll recall the city has 6 districts, and some of them will be electing a council member. Some of them will just be doing the at-large seats, mayor, clerk, and treasurer. And we'll get more into that probably later, I'm sure.
So I'm going to stop you right there because I like the fact that you brought that up. So you said that some will see a council member, some won't. So what exactly will residents be seeing on their ballots?
Okay, so like I said, it's going to depend entirely on where you live. So the districts that are up for election this election cycle are districts 3, 4, and 6. Back in 2018, the first time we did a district-based election, those were districts 1, 2, and 5. Now, I happen to live in District 5, so we'll use myself as an example. So in District 5, we had 3 council members that were on the ballot, and the mayor's seat, because at that time it was a 2-year seat. No city clerk and no treasurer, because those are only in the presidential election cycle. So because my council member for District 5 was elected in 2018, we won't see that on our ballot again until 2022. Now, for districts 3, 4, and 6, those districts are going to have their council member elected. Well, I'm sorry, let me back up one thing. Back in 2018, the other council district that was elected was also District 6, but that was only for a 2-year term. This time now they're going to be on their regular election cycle, which is the presidential election cycle. And it'll be District 3, 4, and 6. So you, for example, I happen to know that you live in District 4.
I do.
You will be voting for council this year because your council member, your council district is up during the presidential cycle. So you will see, I think it's 5 candidates for the city council district race, plus mayor, clerk, and treasurer. For me, I'm just going to see mayor, clerk, and treasurer. Hopefully that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense, because I know last election I was a little shocked not to see any council member on my ballot, but I did see the mayors. So that explains why I didn't see a council seat, because this year.
And that's a shift. You know, the city council seats have been at large for, I don't know if it's the entire city's history, but probably for as long as anyone around these days can remember. So for that change to happen in 2018, we did have a lot of questions for people who I guess weren't aware of the whole districting process happening. So they were like, well, where is the, I've seen signs in the community for vote for so-and-so for city council, but I don't see it on my ballot. So we did have to do some explaining during that election season.
So I'm glad you brought up District 6, because that was the only one that served a 2-year term to be put on the presidential election. Now, what was the reasoning behind that? That they had to have a 2-year term and now they get to serve a 4-year term, whoever occupies that seat?
Sure. So during the 2018 districting process, besides assigning, you know, district boundaries to the various portions of the city, it was also decided that the council should be expanded from a 5-member body to a 7-member body. So, you know, the council district, the council elections have always been elected to staggered terms. Previously, it was 2 council members and the mayor every 2 years. Now with the districts happening, it would be 3 council members and the mayor. So the 3 that were elected during the 2018 gubernatorial election cycle, it was decided that that would be districts 1, 2, and 5. And then the 3 that would be elected during the presidential cycle, it was decided that that would be districts 3, 4, and 6. But we still needed to add that extra body to create the 7-member council. So it was decided that District 6 would be put on the presidential cycle because that portion of the city has historically had a very low turnout. And so in order to hopefully increase participation, it was thought, okay, well, if we have our council member election also during the presidential cycle, that would be more than just a few people that come out during the off election to decide that seat. It would be the maximum number of participants voting in the presidential cycle. So we needed to elect 4 people for the first time in November 2018. So we had 1, 2, and 5 for the full 4 years, District 6 for a short term of just 2 years. And now they'll be on their regular cycle of District 6 doing 4 years during the presidential elections.
Right. Now, this is also the first time, I'm going to go ahead and assume, which is probably bad to do that. This is the very first time that in our city's history that we're actually going to have term limits applied. Now, how does that work out?
Right. So Measure B that was passed in the March primary, that established term limits of 3 consecutive terms for the mayor and council seats. So they're allowed to be elected to 3 4-year terms. Then they're going to have to sit out for 2 years before they're eligible to run for the same office again. Now, suppose you have someone who has served on the council for 3 terms, and then they decide, I want to run for mayor. They're allowed to do that. And then it kind of starts over again with if they get elected, to have the 3 consecutive term limit apply for their mayor's seat. And then actually, I guess, you know, it could go the other way. If somebody ran for mayor and served their 3 terms, they could run for council. But if I could go back and just mention a couple of other things that Measure B is changing for this election. Okay. one of the things is that there are also going to be contribution limits for the first time. Before it was, at-large seats and no term limits and the uh, unlimited contributions. But now the contributions are for council district seats, $500 from individuals and $1,000 from a PAC, a political action committee. And for the at-large seats of mayor, mayor, clerk, and treasurer, it's $750 from individuals and $1,500 from PACs. And a couple of other things that are changing with this election season is the whole COVID factor. I mean, that has changed so much in every facet of life. And, it's sort of sent every election official in the country scrambling to try to figure out how they're going to make this work in the age of COVID. So one of the things that you're going to see is every registered voter, whether you're a vote by mail voter or you've requested a vote by mail ballot, everyone's going to receive a vote by mail ballot in hopes that those who have to stay home and quarantine and keep themselves safe, they'll be able to still participate in the election with their vote by mail ballot and drop it in the mail and not have to be, potentially exposed that way. Another change is that there's going to be, rather than having your one assigned polling place for the one election day, there's going to be voting locations. I think it's 47 voting locations that are located throughout the county, and they'll be open for 4 days. So say you're in Simi Valley, you're visiting your mom, you'll be able to go to a voting location in Simi Valley and vote in your Oxnard race. From that voting location. They're called voting locations. Other counties call them like vote centers. So that's going to be a little more inconvenient. Sometimes it's hard for people who are working to get that Tuesday off in the middle of the day, or the lines are long in the morning, long in the evening. You'll have 4 days, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday to be able to go in and vote, or you have your mail ballot option. And I know that some people are concerned about their, with all we've been hearing about the Postal Service, concerned about having their ballot getting lost or delayed in the mail. So there is a ballot drop box in front of the library. You can take your mail ballot there. And that's going to be open, I think, as soon as the mail ballots go out in mid-October. So you can drop it off there, or during the in-person voting period, you'll be able to go in and take your ballot to any of those voting locations. So a lot of changes this year, but I think it'll be helpful. It gives people more options, which is always nice.
It sounds like it. It sounds like a lot more options and definitely more opportunities for everybody to participate in the election system.
Yeah. And I don't know if everybody should have received, every registered voter should have received one of these cards from the county elections office. And it goes over all this stuff in detail. It has lots of good information about the changes that are going to be different this year. And if you're not registered to vote, you can go online and go to registertovote.ca.gov.
Thank you for that information. Now, in regards to Oxnard's district elections, because I know we touched on it a little bit, but if people want to learn more about how Oxnard got to this point of our election system being broken up into districts, where can they go to learn more about it? Timelines, information, the background, where can they go?
Sure. Well, on the city's website, oxnard.org/districts, that's actually a page dedicated to the whole district process. So it was set up early on in the process, like when we first got the letter that told us that we were out of compliance with the California Voting Rights Act. And it was updated throughout the entire timeline of procedures. So all the public hearings, all the map submittals, all the review. And so it's got that complete history, including the final map and the final ordinance that, adopts that map. And then there's also our city GIS division set up an interactive map where you can enter an address and find out exactly which council district you live in. That could be changing. I believe it's supposed to be redrawn every time there's a census that takes place. So as you know, 2020 is a census year. Um, I think it takes a year or so to get those results. And then after that, um, the idea is to have the districts as evenly numbered as possible population wise. So I know with new development and new, people moving, people coming in, those district numbers are going to change. And so we're going to have to redraw the lines so that all those boundaries represent equal portions of residential areas, equally populated portions of residential areas. So we'll be going through this whole exercise again, probably in a couple of years.
But it would be a little bit easier now because it's just moving a line a little bit over to adjust for population. It's not like we have to draw whole new boundary maps, right? It's just adjusting lines to fit the population number.
Well, it depends. I mean, Wagon Wheel, for example, there's been a huge amount of development that's happened there. That could be thousands of people that are moving in. I'm not sure how many units are in that development, but if you get, 5,000, 10,000 new people, that's going to be more than just shifting the line over a street or so. It's going to change. And I think that's probably the portion of the city that's going to have the most change because of all the development that's happened in River Park and Wagon Wheel. I believe those are both in the same district, which is, I think, District 2. So in order to even out all the districts, we're going to have to kind of do some carving and rearranging to make those districts more evenly populated. Another thing I wanted to add is if you want more information about this particular election, also on the city's oxnard.org website, there's a 2020 elections page, and that's going to include the text of Measure B that includes the changes for the term limits and the campaign finance limits. And then every voter will also be receiving a voter information guide in early October with their candidate and ballot measure information. So that's another reason why it's important to get registered as quickly as possible so you can make sure that you're on the mailing for that voter information guide.
Now, we're also going to have measures on the ballot for Oxnard. How many measures should residents expect to see on that ballot?
You'll see 5 city measures this time, and that'll be citywide, regardless of where you live. So I believe it's measures E, F, L, M, and N.
Okay, great. So I want to shift gears a little bit and kind of talk about you and your experience coming to the city of Oxnard. Because like I read in your bio, you served 8 years at Fort Weneme. You served a year at the county for the sanitation district. And then you ended up in your hometown as the city clerk for the past 4 years. Mm-hmm. So how has your experience been working in your hometown and just being part of the city of Oxnard?
I have to say, it's just, I sometimes I still can't believe that, I'm an elected official of my hometown where I grew up and went to school, and I'm raising my family here. And it's just kind of like, wow, pinch me. So it's really been just an amazing dream to be able to serve my community. I mean, it's great serving other cities or the special district or whatever, but I mean, when you can make a difference in your own city, that's really special. But as far as, actually working in the job, I've got to say it's had definitely its obstacles, its mountains, its ups and downs. One of the toughest things was, okay, well, when I first started, we actually had a vacancy in the department. It's a small department to start with, just a department of 3. There's an office assistant, an assistant city clerk, and the city clerk. That mid-level position, the assistant city clerk, was vacant for almost a year. Wow. So we finally got someone in late 2017, and that was great. But then within weeks of that person starting, bam, the recall petitions arrived. So we were dealing with that. We had to get all those petitions counted and trucked off to the county. The county did their thing in verifying the signatures. And due to the timing of the signature verification, the county wasn't able to provide the services for holding the special election. And so they called me one day and said, "Hey, city clerk, you're probably going to have to conduct a special standalone election." And it was like, the county is equipped to do all those things. They have all the equipment, they know how to mobilize the people, and we had to figure it all out ourselves. And then at the same time that was going on, that was when we were going through the districting process. That was also in early 2018. So we got through all that. We got the districts drawn. We had the special election on May 1st, 2018, a date that will forever be burned in my brain. And then a few months later was the 2018 gubernatorial election, which required, work on that. But, fortunately, the county does those services. So, we do our part, but they do most of the heavy lifting. But it was still a lot of work for our department. So we got through that election, first time district election, as you know, and it went pretty well. So then we're into 2019. That was the start of the committee system for the city council meetings. And that, I think that was actually a really good change. But it did take some changing. It took some acclimating. But I feel like, we've got a pretty good system down. People probably, pretty much know what to expect. I know that internally with the staff, I feel like we're doing pretty well as far as having that flow between committee and council and all that good stuff. And then 2020, COVID.
Yeah.
We had people working from home. We had our buildings shut down to the public, trying to figure out how to still keep business going with all those interruptions. Our council meetings were now fully remote, trying to figure out how to ensure that the public was still able to participate, but keeping everybody safe. So that's been sort of my timeline of difficulties during my tenure. And then sort of like an underlying theme through all that was the city manager seat was a revolving door. When I started there, it was Greg Nyoff, and he left, and we had Scott Whitney as an interim. And then I think at some point, one of the assistant city managers was an interim, and then Alex came in. So we've had some stability for the last 2 years with Alex, being in, but it just, like, they say it starts at the top. So when that seat is in flux, it sort of creates a little bit of shakeup throughout the organization. So we were dealing with that. And like I said, it's just really been no shortage of mountains in the position. But I have to say, I have a great team. They've gotten me through it. They've been just wonderful to work with. They're hardworking, they're dedicated. And then we've gotten just a ton of support from the city manager's office, from the city attorney's office. I can't say enough about, how wonderful they've been to work with and to just sort of brainstorm and problem solve together and just work through all this stuff. And then, the other departments, IT and finance and just the other departments who I have a heavy interaction with. And, it's like, okay, here's the problem. Let's figure out solutions. We come up with a solution. Let's make it happen. So that's been really cool to see. Really cool to be be part of the process of, identifying the problems through working through the solution and executing. I've really enjoyed that. And every challenge teaches you something. So, I feel like I've really been able to grow through this process here, through working at the city of Oxnard.
It would be safe to say that there's never a dull moment in the city of Oxnard, right? Well, that is good. It makes time go by fast, because now look, you went through a whole term already. So
yeah, amazing.
That was fast, and a lot occurred, from districting to special elections to committees to new managers, city managers, and department heads. That is a lot to take on in just a short period of time. Yep. But I want to ask you So you did 8 years in the city of Huanimi.
Mhm.
That's not in an elected position.
Correct.
That's an appointed position. So you have to be actually hired on to take on that job.
Mhm.
And now you took on the city clerk position in Oxnard, which is elected.
Mhm.
So two parts to this question. One, how many elected city clerks are in the county is question number one. And then question number two, which one do you believe the city clerk position should be like? An appointed or an actual elected position, since you've done both?
So, of the 10 cities in the county, the only elected city clerks were Oxnard, Santa Paula, Fillmore, and Ojai. You'll notice a stark difference between those cities. Oxnard is way bigger, and these other cities are smaller. And more cities have been making the transition from elected city clerks to appointed city clerks. And in fact, Santa Paula in the March primary just passed changing their city clerk and city treasurer positions to appointed. So they have their current city clerk finishing out the term. But then as of, after the November election, it'll be an appointed position. Um, and to take that even further, um, Oxnard is even more unique. Besides having the elected city clerk, the city clerk is a department head level um, position, full-time position, versus in those other cities, it's a part-time, probably less than part-time ceremonial position where really their duties are to sign the minutes and to swear people in. Um, because it's treated as a department head level position in the city of Oxnard, I've said all along that it should not be an elected position. It should definitely be an appointed position. Because if you think about it, this person is on the level with the CFO and the public works director and the police chief, even the city manager. These people are all heads of departments with, a large amount of responsibility. And to leave something like that up to an elected position is really taking a big risk. I mean, the only qualifications that are out there for elected positions in the city of Oxnard are you have to be 18 years old and you have to be a registered voter residing in the city of Oxnard. I have a son who's 18. If he were able to campaign well enough, he could become the city of Oxnard. He could be the city clerk. He could take on any of those positions. So um, I really don't think that that level of responsibility should be determined by a vote. It should be filled by a person who has the background, the experience, the knowledge, the education, the training that is required of that position. I mean, it's like I said, just like those other department head level positions. It really should be an open recruitment, bring in the candidates, and may the best man or woman receive the appointment.
Now, because you've held both, would you recommend to the city manager and the city council to say, hey, I think it's time that we start exploring changing the city clerk position into an actual appointed position? I know you said that um, you've not advocated, but you've made comments about that. But would you actually take it that step further and saying, look, Mr. City Manager, Mr. Mayor, Mrs. Mayor, whoever ends up winning the mayor's race this election, it's time to change this. It is time to grow with times. Look at the other cities. They're starting to switch over to appointed versus an elected. And like you just mentioned, Santa Paula being the most recent one. Um, would you take that extra step and go that far and, advocate for that?
I absolutely would. The problem is that it's going to take a little more than advocacy. It actually has to go to a vote of the citizens, just like Santa Paula just did. It's too late for this November, so it would probably have to go on either a March primary or a November general election in order for it to get adopted in that way.
Okay. Now, you talked about certification. I know in your bio it says that you're a certified municipal clerk and have been since 2009.
Yes.
Do you think that's important to have in a city clerk position?
I think it's definitely helpful. I mean, just like, when you look on a recruitment bulletin and it lists the desired qualities, and it'll say a lot of times for city clerk positions, it'll say certified municipal clerk designation, highly desirable, or a plus. It's definitely helpful because what that certification signifies is that you've met the requirements for a minimum amount of experience, on the job experience, that you have undergone, a minimum number of hours of training, very specific to the technical aspects of the job. And then there's also a category of training for what some would call the soft skills, the professional development, conflict resolution, dealing with difficult people, problem solving, interpersonal interactions. And so having that certification, I think, really makes a statement about this person's readiness for the job. Now, there's two levels of certification. There's the certified municipal clerk, which I have. That's a minimum of 2 years of on-the-job relevant experience. And then there's the master municipal clerk, which I think requires 5 years, a minimum of 5 to 7 years of relevant on-the-job experience. I haven't achieved the master's clerk yet. I mean, I've got the minimum number of experience. The problem is that you have to apply. And I just haven't had the time to sit down and put my application together and you have to put all these supporting documents with it and write an essay and all this other jazz. And I just haven't had the time to do it. I hope to. I want to get it done before, I complete this term.
Well, I'm sure you don't have times, after you've already explained what your 4 years have been with the city of Oxnard. Where do you find the time to be able to do that?
I just have to make it. I just have to take a weekend and just sort of, lock myself in a room somewhere and just force myself to do it. But yeah, I that's always been a goal, to achieve that master municipal clerk level, and hoping for it. But besides certifications, the experience is really the most important thing, and that's why again, having this position as an elected position is quite risky. One of the things that I ran on in 2016 was experience matters. And I can't state that enough. This is a very involved job. There's a lot of details. There's a lot of moving parts. And to try to learn on the job is difficult. It really is. So you got to have somebody who can hit the ground running from the first day and just tackle the beast as it comes up. So
now I want to ask something about that, because you took on a position that was occupied by one person for over 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
What new things, procedures, policies, rules, or whatever did you bring in to the department that wasn't already in place?
I think just overall, I helped to smooth out some of the processes. I think that there was a lot of confusion prior to me coming in. Let me just take two examples. The two biggest things that the city clerk's office does on a daily, as your day-to-day responsibilities, are the city council agendas and the public records requests. That's going to consume probably 90% of your day.
Oh, wow.
So just coming up with better processes for getting those things handled. There's a lot of interdepartmental communication, as you can probably imagine, with both of those areas, public records requests and city council agendas. And so I feel like I was able to help kind of streamline those processes. Um, we did implement a new agenda management system called Civic Clerk. I worked in conjunction with the IT department on getting that implemented. That involved getting the staff trained on a whole different system of entering their documents, getting the routing and the workflow set up through the approvals in the various departments that need to look at staff items, um, and then the agenda publication process. That's all different. With the new system that I was able to implement. Uh, we made some streamlines to the citizen advisory group um, processes. Um, there's, I think, about 10 citizen advisory groups. They all had different bylaws. They all had different appointment procedures. They all had all kinds of different stuff. And so trying to get them all as streamlined as possible and helping, for what works for one is going to, work as well as possible for the others. I think that really helped provide some consistency in that area. And then public records requests, we're actually working on implementing a new software. Hopefully it gets fully implemented before I finish my term. But it's called GovQA. It's going to create a new portal on the city's website, and it's going to allow users to enter their requests, right there in the portal, and they'll create their own personal account where they're able to log in and see where their request is. They'll get their notifications in there. They'll get their documents submitted through the portal. And I think that'll help, especially with some of our more frequent requesters, because right now they receive everything by email. So all their communication is by email. Their document fulfillment is by email. And I mean, if they're anything like me, I can get dozens of emails in a day, and it's easy for stuff to get buried. But with your portal, everything's there in the same place, and we'll even be able to post through that portal like frequently asked documents, frequently requested documents. So if we get a bunch of people who are asking for some kind of public works project or something, we'll put it in there as a link, and it'll take them straight to the documents. And it's kind of self-serve in that way, in that they're not having to keep submitting requests. So it should make life easier on both the staff and the public. And we're just excited to get that up and running in the next couple of months.
That sounds actually very exciting. And
It is.
I know I've done my own public records requests, so I apologize to you and your staff for bombarding.
Yeah.
But I want to transition into something else, because you briefly kind of touched on it without actually touching on it, and you're talking about the end of your term. Our city's reporter from the VC Star, Wendy Long, did an article about you and about pretty much the elections and how you are not seeking re-election this year. So what made you not decide to run again for re-election?
Well, so up until very recently, and I mean very recently, I had fully intended to run for another term. Um, and I was actually kind of looking forward to it, because it's like, okay, I've got one election under my belt, 2016. I learned what to do, what not to do this time around. And so it was kind of like, okay, I'm ready. Let's take this on. But prior to submitting my paperwork for candidacy, I got an unexpected call, really from out of the blue, inviting me for consideration for the position of Assistant County Clerk Recorder. And I mean, you talk about getting one of those phone calls that just sort of flips your life around, it gave me a new path to consider. and I talked it over with my husband, and he's always just been my biggest cheerleader and always believed in me and encouraged me to just shoot for the moon. Um, and then I discussed it with the county clerk himself, and it really just seemed like the opportunity of a lifetime that would be incredibly foolish to pass up. So I accepted the position, and I won't be a candidate for city clerk this year.
I know a
And
lot. So
oh,
go ahead.
it's it's bittersweet, to leave. But I feel like I'll be stepping into an opportunity to do more good on a higher level. So I'm just really excited about that. But I did have one condition. I said that I wanted to finish out my term so that I fulfill that full 4-year commitment to the citizens of Oxnard. And they were like, yes, absolutely, do that. So yeah, I'm doing my 4 years and then moving on.
I know personally, I've come across tons of residents um, that were very happy with you in the position as city clerk.
Thank you.
Uh, you've done an amazing job.
Thank you.
It's been a very interesting experience, I'm sure, for you over these past 4 years, coming from a small city like Port Nimi, and then the special district, and then moving into the largest city in the county. Um, I'm sure it's been very interesting. Um, but I know a lot of residents really appreciated you being in that position and felt confident that we were fully getting the information. I can speak for myself on that I felt confident with you in that position. So thank
Thank
you
you. Thank you.
for your service on that.
That means a lot. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for even, taking those steps to run and try to serve your city, and then staying with it for the long haul. As so, thank you for that.
It was
At
my
this
honor.
time, I'm gonna go ahead and look because this is being streamed live on Facebook. I'm just gonna go ahead and check to see if there's any questions, any comments um, from any of our viewers. It has been shared on multiple pages, so it's give me a few seconds to try to figure out where all the comments are coming from.
No problem.
For the most part, um, we have a lot of viewers, which is nice,
Oh, hi, everybody.
but I'm not seeing any comments. So um, we'll go ahead and move on and pretty much just close it out. We've been together in this conversation for nearly an hour, and we've touched on Oxnard's election system. We touched on your experience and what you brought to the city clerk's office. And then we talked about your future. Is there anything else you want to share with the residents of the city of Oxnard?
Well, sure. Like I mentioned before, growing up here, I'm a product of Oxnard, you know, um, and it truly has meant the world to me to be elected as the city clerk. Um, and I just want everybody to know that every day I showed up and I worked to give you my best and provide the top level service that you deserve, that Oxnard deserves. Um, I've always felt that Oxnard, as the biggest city of the county, should be leading the way. We should be the leaders. And I've really just tried to do my best to help make that happen. Um, I want to thank, my family who've put up with long nights away and cold leftovers and just having me um, in a lot of ways have to divide my time between being a mom, being a wife, and serving the city. And but they've just been so supportive and so you know they don't come out and say it, but I think they're proud of me. And then just to the residents, there were people who supported me back in 2016 when I was running. I made a lot of new friends along the way. And then while I was in office, you know, so many people have been so encouraging, so supportive. Um, you know, it was really cool. Sometimes, you know, I'd be a little bit discouraged, and just out of the blue, I would get a card, an actual paper greeting card in the mail from someone that said, "You're doing a great job. Keep it up. Thank you for serving." Or, you know, someone would send an email, or I'd get a phone call, and it would just, that really meant so much to me. And I'm grateful that it showed, you know. That's all you ever want to do is just make a difference, try to leave things a little bit better than you found it. And you know, I hope I did that. I was expecting to do at least 2 terms, but I gave my all during this 1 term. So Oxnard, I've given you my best, and we'll see where the future takes us all. And thank you all.
So thank you, Michelle, for taking this opportunity to speak with me, to share the information that you did today. Um, so thank you for that, and thank you for serving our city, because it is very hard, and I'm sure other elected officials will agree with you that you do have to divide yourself up between family and being able to serve the residents of the city. So it's ultimately the 207,000 plus residents in our city pretty much becomes one of those top priorities for you. But it's always important to be there for our families as well. So thank you for taking this opportunity
Thank you, Daniel.
with us. So, ladies and gentlemen, Michelle Ascencion, who is Oxnard City Clerk, please be sure to join us next week on Thursday at 4 p.m., September 3rd, as we have James Aragon, who is the candidate for treasurer. Please be sure to share this webpage. Oxnard Live is the handle. You can also visit the website, danielchavezjr.com/Oxnard Live to see all of our upcoming guests. So Michelle, once again, thank you. Thank you to all of our viewers tonight. And if you're a candidate out there that I haven't been able to reach, please reach out to me at info@danielchavezjr.com. Michelle, as always, thank you. It's always a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank
And
you.
everybody else,
Likewise.
have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.